So then here, like I say, there's a sternal angle, which where you can feel because it's a junction between the manubrium and then the body of the sternum. And then you mentioned about how there's different landmarks where different things line up. So you have T2 is going to be the superior angle of the scapula. And we've gone over all this stuff before where you palpate the different parts of the scapula. And then palpating in the neck, you can feel along the transverse processes here and then the lamina. And then we've gone over this before, right? Palpating these landmarks on here. And then palpating the different spinous processes. And then in this area here, we're finding the spinous process of L4 and L5. We talked about that before, where if you come in from the iliac crest, you're going to be pretty much at L4, L5 right here. So when you're palpating the spinous processes, a lot of times you want to have two different ways to count to confirm that you're on the right one. So you can come across here, and then also you're coming up from the sacrum. Because also between this, which process is going to be between the two PSISs? Going to be S2. Okay. Usually if you go into here, you're going to be on the second process of the sacrum. And then also you want to be able to find the tips of the ribs here. Because those are going to be different things that we talked about for point location. And so here, because on the list it has the sacral foramen, and so some of these points are located, it says, over the second posterior sacral foramen. And then you want to find, like this other point here, it's going to be in the hiatus of the sacrum. So you're finding the very tip of it down here.
What is the
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just going to be down at the tip of the sacrum, but it's on the list. And yeah, what we're going to do is go over a few more things on the spine, and then we'll go ahead and do some practice and palpate and make sure you can find all of these, and make sure that everybody can find everything that's on all those lists. Okay? So don't leave here without making sure you know everything that's on the list, right? So then here's just some other basic things of palpating the different spinous processes, and then the transverse process. There's not a whole, I mean, the spinous processes are more stand out where you can find those. The transverse process is just going to be along the side here, and those are usually going to be tender on the side of the neck. And so again, here's different reasons why you need to know those locations. Like here it says this point's midway between another point and the mastoid process. And then here, this is going to be over the lateral, over the posterior arch of C1. Right? And then there's C2. And then there's the transverse process of C1. And so then, what's that area right there? Sternocostal angle. And then, you can palpate along the edge of the front of the ribs here. So again, I think I showed that one already. That's different things that you're going to need to know for locating this point. And then here, so you're finding the floating ribs there. And then all the different muscles of the back. So then you're not necessarily going to palpate individually each part of the erector spinae. Okay? So just to review, what are the three different parts of the erector spinae muscles? Iliocrostalis, longissimus, and what else? And then usually each of those have three different parts. The ones that are more laterally tend to start lower and lower, and the ones that are more medial tend to start higher and go farther up. And spinalis, what are those? What are the origin insertions? Yes, spinalis means from spinous process to spinous process. And then what's semi-spinalis? It's not on there, but it doesn't go from spinous process to spinous process, it goes from transverse process to spinous process. So you just want to know the basic things about those different divisions of the muscles and their origin insertions. And then there's the semispinalis capitis. In this case, it doesn't go to the spinous process, it goes to the occiput, or it comes off of the TPs. And then those are some of the deeper muscles here, with the rotators and the multiplicity. And then we have the splenius capitis and splenius cervicis. Those are going to go from spinous process, so they go more out laterally, whereas the semispinalis goes this way. Right? And then the trapezius, so when you're palpating in here, you differentiate between the trapezius muscles and then the splenius. And then there's quadratus lumborum. And then also you need to know the basics about the abdominal muscles. Okay? Which one's on more superficial? What's that? Well, yeah, well the rectus is in the front. Actually it's not more superficial because some of the fibers, remember we talked about that whole thing where it splits and you have the tendon that surrounds the rectus. So which one's the external oblique? Right? So those run this direction, but it does, some of them change. See, the internal, the upper fibers run this way, but then as you come farther down, remember they run more this way. But in general sense, the external obliques are like putting your hands in your pocket, internal like this. And then what's the deeper one underneath that? Transverse abdominis. Okay, and then all of those split and surround the rectus abdominis on the front and on the back. And those are going to do, if they act together, they're going to do flexion, but they're also going to do rotation and lateral flexion. So it's probably,
It's really hard.
so here's just a couple other miscellaneous things. You have the supraspinous ligament that goes on the tips of the spinous processes. And then when you're in this area here, a lot of these muscles, we talked about the thoracolumbar fascia or the aponeurosis. So it's basically fascia that's in this area that a lot of muscles that are going to come off of attached to it, like the latissimus. It's kind of superficial to the rectus spinae. It's kind of like on the front where you have that sheath that goes around the rectus abdominis. It's a fascia sheath that's more superficial to the rectus spinae, but then muscles attached that come off of it. Okay, so what we'll do then is go through and just palpate all these different things, mostly on the neck, because the head, the neck, torso. So we'll go ahead and practice all that and make sure that, like I say, now you've got all those handouts and how all the different landmarks, make sure that you know those. And we're not going to go over all the origin insertions of all the muscles, but you understand you need to know those. So on the finals, most of it's going to be the second half of the class, which is going to be, let's see, where did we start? From the midterm on, mostly the lower extremity, a little bit on the forearm muscle. Okay?